I want to talk about our old man, Mr. Job. Mr. Job. And Lord, bless the reading of your word. Bless us as we read. Help us to apply this. Help us to be convicted and challenged and encouraged and strengthened. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to talk about Job just for a little bit. I want to talk about a passage that honestly, I don't know how many more weeks it's going to take for me to chew on this in order for it to really, really, really have its full effect. And the reason I say that is because it's just so challenging in a good way. So we're going to look at 29 and 31. So if you want to bookmark that, if you want to put your finger in it, if you got a physical Bible, cool. But, if we go back to Job chapter 1, we know that it says that he possessed 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen. This is verse 3, and 500 female donkeys, and very many servants. Which, how many, I mean, with that many animals, very many was, I mean, who knows, but had to be probably hundreds at least. So that this man was the greatest of all the people of the East. Okay. Greatest of all the people of the East. His sons used to go and hold a feast in the house of each one on his day, and they would send and invite their three sisters to eat and drink with them. I've read it before that if if one pair of oxen at that time could cultivate about 10 acres or 100 acres of land in a year, that would mean that he probably managed a farming operation that spanned 50,000 acres. So who knows? I mean, we don't know, but it was a lot. It was a lot of land, a lot of animals, a lot of servants. They also had a lot of parties, which I think is pretty cool, right? Ain't nothing wrong with that. But we know that he was the greatest of all the people of the East from a financial standpoint. Okay, so that's number one. Number one. So what was Job? The greatest of all the people, the greatest of the people in the East. Okay, and if you skip down to verse 8, if you skip down to verse 8, the Lord says to Satan, Yahweh says to Satan, have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man who fears God and turns away from evil? So, Job was not only the greatest financially, somebody tell me in the chat, he was also the greatest what? He was also the greatest spiritually, right? Which tells us, what does that tell us, people? You can be both. You can be both. We don't talk about that enough in the church. You can be both. You can be both. But here's what I really appreciate as you read through the book of Job is, obviously to say that someone is a blameless and an upright man who fears God and turns away from evil. Well, what does that mean? What does that look like tangibly, right? What does it look like for a person to be hyper, 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 hyper wealthy and be marked as one of the greatest people financially, and yet also marked as one of the greatest people spiritually? Like, how do those two things come together? Are you guys with me? Like, how do those two things marry practically for someone who is a God-fearing person? So here's what I really love about the book of Job. It takes a little bit to read and kind of see where how this gets fleshed out. But if we go down to so now if we go down to chapter 29, okay? I love chapter 29, I love chapter 31. We don't have a lot, we don't have obviously hours, so we'll just focus on this little bit. I'll read from the New Living Translation. I think they do a really good job. So starting in verse 2, I long for the years gone by when God took care of me. So by the way, just for context, how many of you know that in the book of Job, right, he's suffering and then he gets these friends that are amazing counselors, right? Best counselors ever. And they're saying, hey, the reason why a lot of their counsel is the reason why all these bad things are happening. You must not be walking in righteousness. You must not be walking in integrity. You must, which by the way, be careful what you say about California right now before you start writing on social media, right? Because the reason he was suffering wasn't because of what he was doing wrong, right? So, but if you read going through this, so in context, right, he's trying to just work this out, right? Is with himself, with friends, and just he's doing a lot of self-assessment and just going, hey, where, have I not done this? Have I not done this? Have I not walked in righteousness? So as we read, he says, I long for the years gone by when God took care of me, when he lit up the way before me, and I walked safely through the darkness. When I was in my prime, God's friendship was felt in my home. The Almighty was still with me, and my children were around me. My steps were awash in cream, and the rocks gushed olive oil for me, right? Just abundance, right? Abundance. How many of you are like, man, I would love it if my steps were washed in cream, right? That might not be the metaphor you're look or the thing you're looking for, but the rocks gushed oil for me. So just abundant, so abundant. Those were the days when I went to the city gate and took my place among honored leaders. The young stepped aside when they saw me. Pay attention, pay attention. So this look at what was happening because of the wealth of Job, right? And this is why we talk about how do we start shifting the attention of kings and the wealthy and the people in power in our country around the world. Like how does that what is it how do we start doing that? Well, look at what would happen. Those were the days when I would sit in the city gate and took my place among honored leaders. The young men stepped aside when they saw me, and even the aged rose in respect at my coming. The princes stood in silence and put their hands over their mouths. The highest officials of the city stood quietly, holding their tongues in respect. In respect. All who heard me praised me. All who saw me spoke well of me. And here's the reason why that I find so interesting. It's probably not what a lot of us think. So, why did they all give him so much respect, give him so much attention, give him so much reverence when he was in their presence? Because I assisted the poor in their need and the orphans who required help. I helped those without hope, and they blessed me. And I caused the widows' hearts to sing for joy. Now, let's just think about that for a second. I assisted the poor in their need and the orphans who required help. I helped those without hope. If so, this is about to get even juicier. So I'm going to go down to my main point, but again, I still just want to have a little bit of a let's just pull off the highway for a second, right? And just take a quick pit stop. We'll still this isn't my main point, but I still think it's important to look at. Okay, the thing that caught the attention of the world or of the world's of the leaders in his area and the people that were in power and the people that were influential was his generosity. Now, could he have done that if he was broke? Yes or no? He wasn't just, oh, I put my little 20 cents in at the with the guy jingling the bell outside of Walmart, and when the missionary came in the church, I put my little $5 bill in, right? That's not nobody's impressed by that. Right? Oh, good for you. He had a level of generosity that literally shifted the attention of princes. Wow. How many of you really want that? You know how I said you want your steps washed in cream, right? You want the rocks gushing out oil. This is a good heart check, guys. This is a heart check for me. I'll be honest. There's some passages when I talk about that, I feel like by the grace of God, I am nailing this right now. And there's some where I'm like, oh. So this is a oh, like I could grow. This is I have a level of generosity right now that is this extravagant. No. I ain't lying. If I'm dying, I'm lying, okay? I ain't lying. I'm just being real, but that's what I want. I really want that. And part of my vision that I'm praying for is God, give me a level of abundance. God, give us a level of abundance and a level, but more importantly, a level of generosity that is so significant. People around us, people are turning heads. Like again, columns are being written about us in major, in major, the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal. Uh, I remember our Maggie's here. She was asking me last week. She's like, "What's your vision? What are your goals?" I kind of talked about my big vision for especially our country. How I want us to be so wealthy and so abundant in every area of our life that the church becomes attractive again. Attractive in a really good way. So, anyways, that's point number one. But then I want to skip down to, so hopefully you can stay with me on this. So down to chapter 31, verse 16. And again, it just gives us a little bit more clarity on what exactly his help toward the poor, toward the needy actually looked like tangibly, right? So he wasn't just helping the poor, which was a big part, right? And he was helping the poor and the needy in such a way that attracted the attention of nobility. But he says in verse 16, have I refused to help the poor or crush the hopes of widows? Right. So again, he's doing this self analysis like, hey, have I done this? And the implied answer is no. Right. No, I haven't done this. Have I been stingy with my food and refused to share it with orphans? No. From child, guys, look at this. This is also a great one for those of you with kids who want to leave a legacy. No, from childhood, I cared for orphans like a father. In all my life, I have cared for widows. Whenever I saw the homeless without clothes, whenever, I'm going to say that again, whenever I saw the homeless without clothes and the needy with nothing to wear, did they not praise me for providing wool clothing to keep them warm? So when he would see people without clothing, when he would see the needy without a covering, when he would see those without something to eat, from all from all appearances, he literally was able to meet every single need around him. Now, someone tell me again, how was he able to do that? How? Moolah, dinero, right? Vast wealth. But guys, if his heart for the poor and the needy has been so challenging to me. And it's something you don't really hear about a lot, I feel, like when people talk about Job. But this was a huge part of his righteousness. When it says he was a man who feared the Lord and turned away from evil, again, that's a cool phrase, but what does that mean? What does that look like? For him, this was so integral to his walk with God and his uprightness and his integrity. Like he couldn't separate the two. So we have to ask ourselves, and again, I'm telling y'all, I am so struck. So I am not coming. This is not I'm not pointing the finger. I'm not coming down on anybody because I feel this, the weight of this. But just, I think two things. Do we have a level of wealth and generosity? And again, I'm going to mainly focus on the generosity, but it's just implied by having the wealth, but level of generosity that turns the heads of people in power because it's so significant and so grand. And again, not even just collectively. He's not talking about collectively. Oh, myself and my kids and my family and my my religious community. We gave so much that no, he's talking about just him, right? But then also, again, if you really look at it, it seems that every need that was around him, right? Widows, orphans, people without clothing, people that were hungry, he was able to meet those needs. And I had to ask myself, if every person in my area came and knocked on my door and said, "Hey, need some help," could I meet that need? Now, again, he's not saying that you have to be that wealthy and that we all have to be able to do that. That's not the point. I'm just saying that I was challenged that he had a heart where he wanted to make those or meet those needs. And obviously he had the ability and the resources. No, I don't think God expects every single one of us individually to be that generous, because I don't think it's just not possible for a lot of us. But collectively, I know we can do it. I know we can do it. You guys know that in the early church, obviously, like as the Roman Empire started to deteriorate, the reason why so many people historically would turn to Christianity is because the government was neglecting the people. And the only people that would actually take care of the widows and take care of the orphans and take care of the needy was the church. That's why the church was so attractive and such a light, because the government was like, we ain't going to do this. They didn't honor those people in society. They considered them weak, dispensable. The Christians didn't see it that way. And we stuck out. We stood out. So I guess it just okay, let's just tie it all together. Again, practically, I would just ask, take a moment and just pray and chew on this and just ask God, number one, I mean, Lord, I want to have that heart, that same heart of Job, that compassionate heart. I mean, even before you have the resources, I think we all need to pray for that burning. I want to burn like Job. I want to burn like that, where you are just, man, I'm every need around me, I want to meet it. Everybody. And you are just like a heat-seeking missile for the needy, just always looking, who needs my help? Who can I love practically, right? And James, it's like if we just say, "Oh, I'll pray for you, go be warm and well fed," we don't do anything. That's not real faith. So Job had a real faith. Faith without works is dead, and works is practical. So I'm just like, man, Lord, give me that desire. And then I think also, can we pray individually, but also collectively, that we would have so much abundance? Yes, our feet would be washed with cream. Yes, the rocks would gush forth oil. But for Job, it was to then extend. So picture Job. It's like, the rock is gushing forth oil and he gets his bowl out. But then here's what he would do. He wouldn't just go like this and chug it. He would then take it and pass it, right? Same thing with the cream. He's like, "Oh, just stepped in some cream." He's gonna scoop it up and he's gonna be like, "Oh, here's someone who's needy. Here's someone who needs help." And he was just constantly on the look for those in need. So you guys know we live in the most materialistic, consumeristic country and society of all time. And it's so easy for our goals to be me, 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 me. But if you look at Job, he constantly from day one, I mean, from very early in his childhood, he had this heart. He had this heart. And I think this is also helpful because some of you guys are like, I'm just such a giver, Jeremy. That's why I'm here. And that's not why you're here. You're not in your financial situation because because you just give, 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 give. Because Job was in that. He gave. To me, this seems pretty extravagant. How many of you were challenged by the generosity of Job? Like the extent of his generosity, right? Pretty wild. But he wasn't broke. So again, you can be both. You can be wealthy and you can be righteous. You can also be generous to the point that it seems like you're giving away everything and you're helping everybody around you, but yet you're also still prospering yourself. And he still would party with his kids and go have feasts and have a good time. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay. He enjoyed the oil, he enjoyed the cream, he enjoyed all those things. But the thing that he really, really, really was focused on was giving. So, what would it look like? I guess, again, one more final practical question. What would it look like for you to step more into that level of generosity? What would it look like for you? What would that look like for you? What do you want to do differently, even if it's just a goal for right now? And part of what I'm praying for, and I pray this for you all right now, is that he would just give you a vision. He would give you a practical way for you to live this out. And to be honest, I think a lot of Christians, the reason why we don't give is because we're just not inspired. I think it's important I think if you're a part of a local body, I think it's great to give to your church. But a lot of churches do a really bad job showing how we're practically caring for the poor and the widow and the needy and things. And we just kind of lose. It's like, are we just paying for their salaries? What are we doing? You know, what are we doing? But is there a cause? Is there something? Is there something in your area? Is there something overseas? Is there something that you could actually get your heart around and get you really motivated and excited to make a tangible difference in the life of others, spiritually, physically, materially? Yeah. So that's it. I love it. I love what you guys are putting in the chat here. Yeah. Yeah, so start having financial goals. How much do you want to give? When do you want to give it? Again, we just have to keep our hearts in check, everybody. There's nothing wrong with wanting a bigger home and having a vision board for that and wanting that, wanting a G-Wagon or whatever it is you want. I'm cool with that. One of my favorite things is we had an event with some of our clients years ago, and they were pulling in, they got the new car and we're all just celebrating. It's fun, right? There's nothing wrong with that, but we just want to make sure, man, am I really, really excited about the ability to be able to take this and then pass it forward and not hold on to most likely most of it. But again, guys, like Job never could have gave if he wasn't pursuing wealth. Job never could have done that if he wasn't actually doing some work to gain wealth. And that's why for people who are like, well, you shouldn't pursue money, you shouldn't want money. It's like, well, that's just stupid, right? If he didn't have all those camels, he couldn't have done anything. He didn't have all those sheep. He couldn't have enough wool to help the needy and to make their clothing. So you have to have something in order to give it. In order to have it, you have to want it. You have to pursue it. You have to make it a focus of your life. So you can do both. And one more final encouragement is I want everyone here to see wealth building as an act of worship, right? I want you to see the work that you're doing to make money and to hustle and to manage it better as an act of worship. Because as you do that, you're going to have excess to be able to give and to be able to bless. And again, like that is like real faith. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the worship song. There's nothing wrong with us standing in church for an hour and singing praise on a Sunday morning. Nothing wrong with that. But some of you don't feel that same level of connection to God and spirituality by sitting at your computer and grinding out something that's going to help you make some extra money so that you can bless the needy. And you need to feel that same level of, I am doing this unto the Lord, and this is an act of worship because this is going to allow me to be able to bless. It should be worship, guys. It really should. When you're setting up your retirement account or you're setting up that savings account or you're doing that one thing, you're like, you should feel like worship. And if it doesn't, just shift your thinking around it because that's what's going to, again, like I'm growing sheep right now that are eventually going to give me the wool to help the homeless, to help those who need clothing. Right. So just think of it like that. And I want you guys to have that same attitude. Okay. Awesome.